Hello, everyone, and welcome to our highly anticipated automation webinar. I'm Dana Baranowski, Marketing Manager here at Elevated Signals, and I'm very excited to be your host for today's panel. It's bound to be a very informative and captivating conversation today. This session is part of our ongoing Elevated Signals webinar series, where we explore relevant topics in the cannabis industry. We bring together top-notch professionals, including people from cannabis production facilities, consultants, and industry experts, to bring real insights based on real-world experiences. And these sessions are really designed to foster candid conversations. Just a little bit of housekeeping here. This webinar will be available on replay. It will be emailed to you after this session, and it will also be available on our website at www.insights.elevatedsignals.com. So now let's dive into today's topic and introduce our panel. We'll be exploring cannabis automation and what it entails, as well as how producers should be thinking about it in today's markets. Then we'll talk about how automation could enhance adaptability in the face of today's turbulent markets. And then we'll jump into a candid conversation with the panel where they will share their automation stories, the good and the bad, and then we'll wrap up talking about ROI. So without further ado, let me introduce our esteemed panel. We've got Chris Lowe, COO and VP of Sales at Keratin, Michael Inman, Director of Quality Assurance at Rocket Factory, and last but certainly not least, Tom Varga, Managing Director and Co-Founder at Biotica Agrimed. Thank you so much for being on our panel today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dana.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, great to be here.
So to kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and background into your experience in automation? Tom, could you please start us off, and then we'll pass it off to Michael and then Chris.
Thanks, Dana. Look, firstly, great to be called top notch, and thanks very much for having us here. This is awesome. Our journey, or my personal journey in cannabis, really is pretty recent. We've been doing this for 4 years with a co-founder, Matthew Turner. We've started Biotica Agrimed, an Australian-based B2B business and cultivator that also has Apollo Green as a genetics business. We're growing a lot of cannabis, about 5,000 kilos at the moment, which is expanding pretty rapidly. And, for anyone that's been out there that's growing today and working in this space, how many people it often take this plant. And our focus has been around how can we use automation as a consumer of automation? How can we use automation and AI to really find ways of making sure that we get great quality product out the door, make sure we're cost competitive, but also find ways of making life easier for the people that are out there looking after the plant.
Fantastic. Michael, did you want to jump in there and give us a bit of an intro?
Sure. So I'm the quality assurance person at Rocket Factory Cannabis. We are a small company, so our annual output is maybe 2,500 kilograms of dried flower a year. But I've hopped around the cannabis industry over the past sort of 10 years. So I've seen a lot of things. I would say my experience with automation, after doing some time in medical devices, my experience is mostly what I'm going to call the fun police. So the QA has this sort of reputation of like, everyone step back, let's like try and understand, right? So that's kind of what I'm bringing to this conversation today. Is I'm not here to be like, officer downer, but I definitely do try to bring that level of analysis and foresight into the process.
Love that. The fun police.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Chris.
Yeah, so at Keratin, essentially, and myself, I've been with them for the last 3 years, but really in heavy-duty diesel and all sorts of heavy industry, including power generation. And so, automation has always been, the precipice for every business we're essentially operating in. And we see it throughout all sorts of industries, because really we're taking manual labor, and this is from the turn of the century, manual labor into more automated processes where we're getting machines to do it. And I'm lucky to be with a really good group of people who are really pushing the boundary. And you can see we're on the floor of MJ Biz here, and there's a couple of new technologies that we're pushing out there that you don't see in the rest of the industry, that we're just keep pushing the automation envelope. And everything isn't for everybody, but we want to make sure that we're trying to solve problems and not create more. So
Awesome. Yeah. Walking around the MJ Biz floor, I got a chance to talk to some people at automation companies, check out a few technologies, and also chat with producers. And it's kind of interesting how the perception of automation in the cannabis industry has really shifted over the years. I think from a Canadian perspective, we came out swinging. Everyone had the funds to invest in technology. So they were trying to build these state-of-the-art facilities. And then we kind of had a regression for a while where we weren't seeing as much automation. We were going back to the basics. So I think we're kind of coming out of that now. So in your opinion, how do you perceive automation in cannabis facilities in today's market? And then we have Tom's perspective, obviously, in Canada and Australian markets. And then why do you think it's important for cannabis operators to consider automation all throughout the seed to sale process, from cultivation, post-harvest, production, as well as packaging? Tom, do you want to kick us off here?
Yeah, you've opened a great question, right? I guess, when we look at where we're heading as an industry, and you have a look at the challenges and go through that life cycle you just talked about, we now need to think about how we do compete going forward. How do we survive? The markets are littered with, and not just in North America, we've seen failures in Australia as well. The markets are littered with companies that haven't survived. They haven't been able to, stay the course. And please don't misinterpret that I think automation is the secret to that. But a great cost structure and being able to be competitive and to be able to produce quality product out the door all the time. Chris has got the Marvel behind him, so shameless plug to Marvel for that. But to be able to do that consistently, I think is where we're sort of really have to get the focus now. But also maybe the definition of automation has to be thought of. I've seen some great, for want of a better word, automation in facilities that are very low tech, that are very low cost, that could be implemented by anyone, and they're achieving great results to make sure that they get a good quality product at a really good, competitive position. And as a cultivator, someone who's living and breathing this every day, we need to make sure that we look forward and find those ways of maintaining our competitiveness.
And I really am interested and glad that you brought up this regression from automation that we have seen, and I'm so impressed that you picked up on it, because we of all people see that because we're on the front lines of moving automation forward. And I'm not sure that it's the automation itself that people were regressing from, but it's more like that mentality of back in 2 or 3 years ago or 10 years ago, we were successful doing this, so we better go back to these old ways of doing things to bring our success back. And it was more a macroeconomic condition around the cannabis industry that was just depressed, regardless of what technology or what way you were doing things. So I think it was like an artificial separation or an incorrect correlation between the two. But what you're seeing now is that, especially in the last couple of months, is that all these cultivators that had gone all the way back are like, hey, we're noticing that we increased our cost base by moving away from automation. So if we want to keep going and going back, let's pull because most of them had automation equipment that they just put off to the side. They're pulling those back into the process and now repairing them, bringing them back up to condition. So we're seeing the consumable portion of the business pick up. So people are pulling that old equipment back and putting it back into the process. So it's nice to see that the underlying principle of automation to run these businesses is still strong, and people realize it.
I agree. I think there was a huge fear that the market seemed to be expanding, and at the same time companies were expanding in a way that from my perspective, wasn't really sustainable. And so, you know, I've been to several companies where you have huge pieces of equipment that I know for a fact cost, you know, a lot of money, and they're just sitting there, right? So I think there was a very strong push to automate, you know, pull from other industries, utilize what's already known, you know, do that as part of your process design. And so I think when it comes to like the role of automation in cannabis facilities, that push to be the best and the fastest and those things have kind of quieted down. And now it's doing more focused on like, what does the customer want? How are we going to achieve consistent results that Tom talked about? And how are we going to do it in a way that's going to make things, you know, safer, easier, less waste? So that those things are really what come to mind. A lot of the things now I'm seeing don't necessarily have to do a lot with throughput. They're more about customer centric, customer quality. But that being said, like automation, like Tom mentioned, can be as simple as like replacing a single watering step with, you know, something with multi-channel, right? That level of automation, you know, is very simple, but you can move to something as complex as packaging, labeling, excise, master casing, all in a single automated line. So I think really when we talk about like what is really important from my perspective, especially from a quality perspective, you start with the voice of the customer. You look at what the business is demanding in terms of return of investment, because that's probably the two most important things. And then you look at what you're capable and not capable of doing. So those are really the three major things that I usually see when approaching those big automation projects.
But Chris and Michael, I've got to say, I think you two have just hit on maybe one of the most fundamentals that isn't talked about. And that is this idea of maybe appropriate automation and appropriate timing of automation. You know, Michael, you're so spot on. How many facilities have we all walked through where there are hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars of automation sitting idle that got bought ahead of time because some idiot on a spreadsheet decided that this was going to be a great thing, so I can run around and say I'm the best, I'm the fastest, I'm the lowest cost. You're not the lowest cost if you spend millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars on something that you don't utilize and then you go broke and destroy shareholder value. Makes no sense.
Or you utilize it and then you find out, yeah, it meets our specification as output, but does not meet at all the specification for reject rate. You know,
Yeah.
I've seen pre-roll machines, they'll produce like 1,000 pre-rolls per whatever second or hour, but only like, you know, 20% of them are good. Like, come on, like that's not cool.
And the voice of the customer point you raised as well. I mean, again, you know, how many people have turned around and just bought equipment to be automated and cheap and forgot about the fact someone's got to buy this product at the end and what's being produced they don't like. I mean,
yeah.
The consumer has been trained by the rest of CPG that it needs to be of the quality they expect consistently, and that's the theme that we're getting from all the producers around. And you're not going to get consistency without automation in the most cases. Like, I mean, your potato chips, McDonald's, you name it. Like, it may not be the quality, the highest quality. It'll be quality that they expect the customer to get, but it's consistent every single time.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you guys brought up a really good point about like short-term versus long-term planning. So how do you optimize for what you're doing right now, but also think about what you're going to be doing in the future, right? We see how quickly the market changes. We see just the product formats and how they've changed. So how would you go about thinking about that sort of problem?
It's huge. And so I'll use one specific example, which is packaging and labeling automation. So when a company gets together and they're starting to develop new products, it's a very exciting time, right? Everyone wants to have the coolest packaging, the coolest label, something that's going to resonate with consumers. And so go around, brainstorm everything. And then usually, I'm not saying this, you know, just to be facetious, but usually someone in QA puts up their hand and says, how are we going to handle all of these products through a single line, right? What's the best way to optimize this? If we have pouches, or if we have cans, or if we have, tincture bottles, whatever it is, how are we going to manage all of that inventory? What are we going to do physically to manage, all of the products we're talking about? So, there is something to be said from learning from those companies that Chris threw out. Coca-Cola does not, they don't buy 17 different bottles, right? They only buy one bottle, right? And they label that bottle the same way. So there's got to be from start to finish, there has to be that voice of the customer, and then understanding when we're looking at process design, does it make sense for us to have 14 different products in 14 different packages with 27 different labels or whatever it is. So that's a really important thing that I usually like to look at first.
And what we see from the from our perspective, working with customers is, and this is probably lessons learned from the Canadian market legalizing in 2018 and these massive facilities, is that the smart operators that are in a good position to scale now took a modular approach to building their facilities, so that they're not overcommitting now. They're saying, this is the build the capacity I need. It might have a slightly higher incremental cost if you add everything up over the long run, but the initial capital cost purchases in steps are lower. But build things in a modular fashion so it fits today's solution, but you can scale up to tomorrow without putting everything out front. And that seems to be the best strategy for short and long term growth right now.
Yeah, and look, as someone who's bought equipment and bought equipment now sitting in a shed not being used, right? So I can relate to some of these guys that have done that. This short and long-term question that you've asked, and no shameless plug for Kit and what Jay, Jocelyn, and Chris are doing there, but the suppliers, guys like what they're doing, need to step up to the plate as well to help people with decision making, and we've seen it first. And equipment business to trial, to test, to see how it worked, rather than having to make a leap of faith, and having a company that will stand behind their product and say, let's help you in the short term, let's get you over the line. And I think we're heading to a new era, an era of leasing equipment, an era of renting equipment, an era of trialing equipment, so you can bring automation in without having to bet everything on red or black at the roulette table, is a really big part going forward. But here's the other challenge: for God's sake, like let's open our doors again. If we learn anything from legacy, and I think this is a massive issue, if we learn anything from legacy, it was this brotherhood, this camaraderie, this working together, guys and girls who are loving the plant, loving the industry, who are the previous custodians, sharing to make sure that we had an industry. Here we are, we're in a legal world, and you have corporates that won't let people through the front door. You have information not being shared. Great that we're doing this podcast, right? We've got to get more information out there and work together as cooperative competitors, so that you can make good short-term decisions and be in the race for the long term.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. A big part of what I took away from my time in the mining industry is that they all got in a group. They're putting massive amounts of whatever material they are in the market, and they're like, hey, if we can make it better, we make it better for the environment, we make it better for each other. There's so many additional wins. We don't have to fight each other for this space. And I think Tom's nail on the head, sure.
Right, lights all. Lights.
I want to touch on something that you guys brought up, which is kind of being adaptable. What is your opinion in terms of how automation can help you be adaptable? I think you can kind of see it both ways. It could potentially hold you back, or it could really accelerate things for you. So curious to hear your thoughts there. Maybe Michael, did you want to kick us off?
Sure. So one really cool quality tool that I would also encourage suppliers of automation equipment to utilize and be very upfront with their customers about is an FMEA. So that's a failure modes and effects analysis. So what that is, basically, for people who don't know who are listening, is if I look at a piece of equipment or a process, and at each very, very specific step of that equipment, I'm looking at what are the failure points, what are the effects of those failures, and what do I do about those critical points, right? And so what that does, from a quality unit's perspective, is it opens you up to looking at your organization as a whole. Automation really does change your perspective of how things are being done and how things could be done to bulletproof your organization. So when it comes to adaptability, you really want to focus on another really cool thing that I'm just getting into, which is called organizational capacity for change. And so FMEA's organizational capacity for change, those two principles, when you bring those in their best iterations to automation, really help an organization be adaptable to all sorts of crazy things that you could potentially be doing. So that's one thing, is like having your organization in a position where they can take on these projects and really develop from them. The other thing is designing products, designing things in a way that does not like pigeonhole you into a specific way of doing things. So that's definitely what I'm looking for, is like, what can my equipment do? What can I as an organization do when I encounter failure, or when I am trying to set up something in the best way possible? That's really how you allow automation and implementation of new techniques to expand your abilities as an organization. So,
and go for it, Chris.
No, well, I was, I should probably go last, because I'm stuck in the middle between adaptability and putting products out, because really,
yeah.
I've got a couple really expensive products where we let the engineers go. They wanted to make it as adaptable as possible, but scope creep came up and really made this really robust, expensive product very versatile, very adaptable, but really expensive to the point where it's almost not feasible for the customer. So like there's a trade-off a little bit, and so some of our later innovations now, we're trying to make it more adaptable and so that we have the ability. But like I'm not going to lie, I'm going to tell you right now that adaptability and set automation, they're not they weren't traditionally very compatible. But you know, with us now developing more AI and IoT developed products, they are platform products where we can then take the basis of that structure and then adapt them to other parts of the organization as the market moves. Because as everybody knows, in the last couple of years, it's changing faster than we can keep up, right?
Let me give you a different lens on that, though, Chris. I think I hear what you're saying about the adaptability of the equipment itself, but here's what I think you're enabling, and what some of the automation and AI enables, and this is the adaptability of the individual and the business. So if we think back, go back to the farmer, right? Once upon a time, he's out there with a horse plowing the field, right? He's got no time to do anything else but go out and plow the field. Then he eventually ends up with a tractor. Now he's got 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day where he can think about his business. He can think about what he does. He can find improvements elsewhere, because now he's not out there all day with the horse. Eventually, he ends up with an automated little guided vehicle that's out there doing it, and he's sitting back in his office, and now he's thinking about the best crop, the best yield, how do I get rid of pests, how do I improve my business? So when I think of adaptability, I take your point about the equipment and you know, the scope creep and what needs to happen there, but elevated signals, isolocity, like guys, what you're doing is allowing us to automate, for want of a better word, either the mundane or the repetitive, and to enable us to have an entire team that can put the gray matter that they have towards solving our bigger issues and improving yield by 1%. You've now got a guy who can sit there and think about that for an hour a day, because he's got some form of automation, electronic or mechanical, that's just giving him thinking time. I think that's where the adaptability comes in. Maybe not in the equipment, but what it brings to your business is huge.
It's just my attempt to being self-deprecating, I guess.
And you did it very well, Chris.
Yeah.
You did it well.
But how did that scope creep with your engineers? Like, how did that develop? Because that does happen, like when we're looking at processes, you know, and automation. Because like you'll get someone with a great idea, like we should buy an automated labeler, and then someone will go down the line and say, well, let's buy an excise stamp automation and let's buy packaging automation. So like was that something that evolved naturally, or how did you guys
It was
do
an
that?
organic, like we tried to create a engineer's playground. We give them tools, time, say, you know, here's the amount of time that you need to do it. Here's the final objective. And it's the nice to haves that everybody walks by the engineering group and says, oh, it'd be nice to have this, nice to have that. And, you know, you kind of set some barriers, some boundaries, and sometimes they get adhered to and sometimes they don't. And we've got some really, really cool products out of it. You know, so I wouldn't, you're going to break some eggs to make an omelet, but it doesn't always end up that way, right?
Mm-hmm. No, that's good. It's good to have that type of an environment where you can let people expand and explore. But yeah, definitely sometimes you need someone to like be like
in
hey,
higher times, it's definitely
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to bring it back to Tom's point where, you know, you're getting that time back and you can do higher valuable things with your time instead of, you know, looking at documents and reconciling inventory, all that sort of stuff. So I guess my thought around that is, how do you approach automation from a team perspective, like a project capacity perspective? I think a lot of people assume that automation will, you know, that ROI on automation is mostly labor cost savings. So what do the employees at your facility think when you're bringing in automation technology? Are they thinking that, you know, they're going to automate their jobs away? How do you approach that?
Look, as someone who's implemented, you know, a few bits and pieces into our facility around automation, there's no doubt that with progress and with the introduction of automation, there will be some times where it does reduce a labor count, right? And I think, you know, firstly, having the courage and the right culture to be able to have that conversation, I think, is important. So I don't want to get HR here because it's an AI sort of conversation, right? But I think you've got to be able to do that piece. But there is so much that goes on, and we're lucky we're in a high value plant. We're in a high value industry. So when you do bring in some of this automation and you do start to create some of this free time and free labor that's not required, I think that the better operators, and I say better is because it's such a motherhoody type word, but the better operators who have got that long-term vision, short and long-term, as you said before, are then thinking about how can I use the resources I've freed up to maybe find 1% better yield? How can I use those resources to maybe find an improvement in my business? And there will be natural attrition. So there'll be time where you say, all right, some resources move on. But I don't think automation, and really I think companies who are coming with the lens of solely bringing automation in for cost down, they're looking at one aspect of the 3, 4, 5 benefits that can come from automation. You know, reduced effort, you know, health and safety, you know, improved quality, improved yields. All of these are the other byproducts, and the cost piece has to just be one small consideration of it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think utilization of labor too, like in small companies especially, you know, we have staff that, you know, we know their good points. We know where they are best utilized. And to bring in automation, it just means that we're utilizing staff differently. So that's definitely something else. But the health and safety one, I can't stress enough, like that really, it's not often overlooked, both from an analysis perspective of when I bring in a piece of equipment, what is the health and safety impact, to also like what is the impact on my workers, where they don't have to, you know, manually apply labels and repetitive stress injuries and stuff like that. That is a really huge piece, and that goes like that's an ROI that's potentially not calculated. The ROI may only be looked at from a perspective of output and ability to have more products, not necessarily an ROI of time off, injury, and that sort of thing.
We are in hundreds of facilities where we're putting automation solutions in, which is reducing man hours required for that specific task. But nowhere have we put up a piece of equipment or a solution in, and there's been a mass layoff. These producers are always pushing the limit on what they can do and what they can achieve. So once we put a solution in that frees up some manual labor, they're happy to get this carpal tunnel syndrome tasks or these highly repetitive visual tasks, put them on higher value parts of the organization that they were planning on improving anyway. So it's not like they're going to the unemployment line when these come in. They're going to find different ways to improve their processes, become more efficient. They're training those people to do more valuable work. So there isn't this one-to-one displacement. I was actually speaking with a producer last night that says that they enjoy the opportunity they're giving to temporary foreign workers, but it is a laborious and expensive task, and they'd like to keep some of that work with the people that are local to them and not have to bring temporary foreign workers in. They pay a premium for these foreign workers, and they're giving them opportunity, but at the same time, it's something that we'd like to bolster the local economies, right?
And go back to the ROI as well, Dana. I think we've got to think ROI. Sure, that's one thing, and all the accountants that are watching this and all the CFOs are going to be thinking this is the world's best thing. But we also need to look at that opportunity cost, right? And not everything can come through in a spreadsheet with a net present value and a discounted cash flow. Sometimes you've got to think through, what does this mean in terms of, go back to voice of the customer? What does this mean in terms of quality out the door? What does this mean in terms of OH&S? What does it mean in terms of my competitive positioning? And all of these have to come together. So the opportunity cost piece, I think, is so under talked about when we talk about automation, and really has to come to the fore a lot more. Now, careful for the small guys, anyone who's a small business or a craft grower, etc. I want you to also look at it the other way, that says there could be an opportunity cost of trying to bring in automation. So, does the opportunity cost rule out some bits of automation? And are you better staying with some of the existing pieces? Because, again, go back to who's putting in a T0. Well, if a craft guy's putting in a T0, he's missed the boat, right? Like, he's missed the boat. But if he puts in a T4, right, that might make some more sense, So again, this appropriateness, I think, is just so important.
Yeah, and I'll just add one more thing to the ROI piece, is an often overlooked cost that is, there's that inverted triangle, that's the cost of quality. And there's that I think what it is basically, we're going to spend, $10 on a bit of labor, or we're going to spend X amount to buy a Marvel, and that investment is potentially going to save us, the next level up of $100 and the next level up of $1 million, or whatever it is, when it comes to recalls, when it comes to rework, when it comes to other things. So that's a huge thing that ROI basically, in my experience, excludes from the equation, because it's those, sunny days approach where it's like, we're never going to have a recall, we're never going to have to do a major rework. And so that sort of idea of cost of quality and what that puts into the equation when it comes to ROI, that's really important in my opinion too.
Yeah, I've had a hard time gathering the cost of a bad Reddit review out of a producer yet.
That's right. It's huge.
and Michael, go back to your point, so we have a philosophy in our business about perfection out the door. So, when we're sending product out as a B2B, because we're B2B, when we send bulk product B2B out the door, we want every bud to be perfect. And we can achieve that. We can achieve that with everyone looking at it. But then you also find, if you go back to some of the examples, an opportunity benefit that we've ended up with out of Marvel was that not only can we now help automate that, because when you're looking at bud by bud, right, like that's a really menial task. We don't necessarily want our guys doing that. But at the same time, we found that some of the buds that we thought, hey, we're not going to send out, were actually okay. And Marvel's been able to go through and pick up a little hidden gem, right? Like a small bit of extra revenue that was disappearing through the system. So, you know, as we think about automation, it could be something as simple as a manual conveyor belt that just has one less person touching the plant. You know, it could be a small conveyor belt that takes it from one step to another and reduces the touching of the plant. And all of a sudden, the opportunity cost is a better quality product hitting the market. Like that's where we start to get some real exciting thoughts around automation.
Yeah, you're touching on all the QA feels right now. So like everything you've touched on there is like, let's go look at Toyota case studies. Like, let's look at driving defects down to zero. Let's look at total quality approach, right? So like anyone listening who maybe doesn't have the best interactions with their quality unit, you know, have a chat with them. Like that, there's often a lot of really good case studies where, you know, we can be Toyota, or we can be like Skoda, or we can be, you know, like some other brand, right? That's a conscious choice that you have to make. And it's hard. It's really hard. I don't want to like downplay it, but total quality and Toyota approaches are extremely difficult. So bringing automation into that idea is really valuable, but it's really hard.
Yeah, yeah, and appropriate total quality management. You need to pick where a brand is positioned or where your company is positioned. If you're selling a budget product into the market, you're probably not looking to find a Marvel system out there, because that budget product is at a particular price point. If you're selling a premium product, you better get it right. Otherwise, you're shit out of luck and you won't be around.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in here. You guys have such great discussion points around like how to think about automation and really thinking about like what are you trying to achieve. But if we're looking at quality, you can improve quality through automation in so many different aspects across the production line. So how does the business go about understanding like I should automate this small thing here, or maybe something more major over here?
Yeah, that's a huge problem. It's, well, I guess it is and it isn't. So like Tom just finished off with, what are your product characteristics? What are you trying to achieve? What is it that makes your brand your brand? And it also, like, because cannabis is such a huge market in terms of the types of products, it's going to be very different from dried flower and pre-rolls to edibles and capsules. So it's such a difficult question to answer without knowing the very specifics. So the thing that I can speak to specifically is, you know, dried flower. When a customer opens a package, and I've seen this a lot, you know, people on Reddit will videotape themselves taking out the buds, measuring how much they got in the container. And if it's not 3.5 or 7 or 28, they will lose their minds, right? And rightfully so. Like if they only get 21 grams, they should be annoyed, right? So if the impetus for like getting automation is we want our customers to know that we are always going to give you 3.5 grams, you know, then that is the product quality you need to drive. That aspect needs to be driven down to as how can we make that as consistent as possible.
Yeah, and yeah, go back to sort of your point. It's such a great one when you think about businesses, right? We have an endless list of improvements, endless, you know, and God forbid, you know, between the cultivators and post-harvest, if they're not finding something new every week because they've listened to a podcast or they've watched a YouTube video. So always coming with things to the table. But I know what the theory says, but I look at it that we're looking at 4 different things, you know, when we're trying to evaluate them: the capital, the strategic impact it's going to have on us, the value we're going to get from it, and really the importance that it has. I think we've just lost the importance that it has, you know, for the business. If we look at those sort of 4 criteria and sort of start measuring against those, you then look at that endless list of opportunities and you try to find the one that's going to move the needle the most. No pet projects. Whatever you do, no pet projects.
Mm-hmm.
Don't follow the latest fad. but trying to find the one that moves the needle the most for your business so that you've got better efficiencies internally, happier team members, happier customers out there in the field. That's the one that you need to pick to focus your attention on. It's not easy. It's not easy. This is where the robustness of the debate comes in as well. You know, our fun police over there, I mean, maybe I disagree. I don't think Michael's the fun police, but, you know, the fun police over there, you know, you need to bring your quality guys into the equation as much as your operational guys, because it's those different lenses that create it. And the solution lies somewhere in the middle of all of those lenses. And that's how you can sift the 1, 2, or 3 big projects to work on. And maybe they're not big. Maybe the best value and the best improvement is a $3,000 conveyor belt, right? Or a $2,000 labeler, or you know, a counter that just tells you how many did we actually do. So the improvements can be incremental, but you know, you don't look for home runs. There should be no home runs. We just want base hitters. 1% improvement every day. If you can improve 1% every day, it's 260% a year.
And I'll point out that often some of the best ideas often come from the employees, and that's, you know, that requires a certain level of management accountability and management involvement that a lot of companies, in my experience, don't drill down to. So, you know, yeah, we could buy this piece of equipment and we could put out, you know, 2,000 units a minute. But does that mean that it's going to be good for the workers? So does that mean it's going to be good for the product? Maybe an employee has a better idea. Like, maybe we don't need this piece of equipment. So sometimes accountants, I'm going to pick on accountants because usually they will look at that bottom line, right? That's all they'll look at, rather than going to the floor, understanding the process. What is it we're actually trying to do? So yeah, like, your points are really well taken there, Tom.
And if we can go full circle on a conversation before, bring in some automation, free up some thinking time, use that thinking time to find those improvement projects in your business, get the team together now, because they're not worrying about filling in a spreadsheet or filling in a manual form. They've got Elevator doing things automatically, or Isolocity for our QMS, Isolocity doing things automatically. Now they're thinking of the next new idea. They're coming together to debate it. You implement the idea. They find an extra 15 minutes in their day. They're coming up with another one. Like this is a self-fulfilling circle that just keeps coming around in a loop. And that's where we get continuous improvement. And that's what we're all about.
Apologize, I had to switch devices, but as long as we're on the same topic, we have, from our perspective, we have to take the approach of, you know, what to fix and where, from a much more a holistic approach, where we, you know, really you know, think as their CEO, or talk about their CEO about what their overall strategic vision is for what their product's going to be like. And like, then we go on a diagnostic mode and look through their process and see, you know, what pieces may or may not align with that overall vision of what they want to produce, right? And there might be a spot where you're like, okay, you need a complete overhaul, or hey, there's only this 1 or 2 spots that you need to tweak to get to that vision, right? Or maybe there's nothing wrong with what you've got in your process. You just need to, you know, change maybe some of your drying process, or your actual like, nothing to actual done, like, changes to physical equipment, but actually just some of the way you're doing things differently. And, you know, that's where we have to take that consultative approach, and, you know, be the customer's advocate in these facilities when we come and approach these. I mean, we like producing equipment and getting into facilities, but I'm getting no more pleasure than consulting with a customer and not selling them anything, and them improve, because we much more value the lifetime value of a customer than, you know, just putting equipment in the field.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we're getting to 40 minutes here. So time really flies by when you're having fun, right? So I guess I want to start wrapping it up. If you had one key message that you would like to leave with our audience today, what would it be? One key takeaway. Chris, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah,
Not to put you on the spot.
no, by all means. Like, the one key thing is, really, you got to look at what and this actually ties into my last point, is like, take a look at what you want as a company for your customer to experience, and then make your decisions backwards from that. I find a lot of people get into like the nuts and bolts of growing the plant and how they want to do things, and lose sight of what the end result needs to be. And I feel like that like customer work backwards works for the most successful companies in the world. Work from the customer backwards.
Yeah, I think if I could leave the audience with one thing, I think I've said it already, is and this is, automation is such a good topic because it, as people may have gathered from this discussion, it touches everything in a business. So because of that, automation can be very difficult to plan for, to implement, to be consistent in. It touches on, how is your facility designed? Do you have ceiling clearance for an automated packaging unit? Maybe you don't. Do you have adequate lighting for certain automation tasks? Do you have, compressed air? Like, some people don't even, realize what it is they actually need to accomplish certain things. Furthermore, do you have like the brain power in your management, in your employees, to be able to look at a process and understand it in a way that it's going to be effective to bring in these automated techniques? And then on top of that, do you have the I'm going to say fortitude and courage to be consistent and to respond to something when something goes wrong? Because it will go wrong 100%. I've never seen an automation in cannabis be implemented without a hitch. There is always going to be something that goes wrong. So I think that there really has to be, everyone has to understand that it's going to be difficult, and that while it will make your lives easier in the long run, you have to do it for the right reasons, and you have to do it with the right attitude going into it.
Mine's easy. Everything Chris and Michael just said. No, look,
we nailed it. Yes.
Yeah, he nailed it. That's it. No, look, if I'd have to give one, and it's probably going to transcend automation. It's going to transcend our industry and all of the businesses. Be your own biggest critic, skeptic, sort of voice of conscience. Like, that to me is what it's about, and that's so important for automation. If you're running around going, we're the best, we are perfect, no one can beat us, we've been doing this for years, I know what needs to be done, you're shit out of luck, right? Then this entire 40 minutes was absolutely fucking wasted. You don't need to listen to it anymore, because you already knew everything and you should have finished it in the first minute. But if you can be an egoless player in this space, and the robust conversations that you can have with people, look at what we've done here. Look at the conversations over the last few nights, the debates that have happened over the last few nights at MJ Biz. I mean, they're the guys that are really then looking at what automation can help with and what systems can help. But you've got to be your harshest critic. We've got to go out. I'm embarrassed about the first few crops we grew. We're at crop 170. I'm embarrassed about the first few crops that we grew. I cannot believe we grew that bad cannabis. Now, with the work we've done, with the improvements, with the learning, with the systems, being harsh on ourselves, right? We are producing some of the most amazing cannabis. And there are so many great guys doing that out there. But we've got to get cannabis, corporate, cultivation working together. We've got to embrace the fun police. We've got to bring in AI. We've got to bring in technology. But we have to be critical every day so that we ratchet up 1% every day as an industry.
Yeah, failure is the harshest teacher, right? But that doesn't mean you throw up your arms and walk away. But I'm glad you guys learned from those first crops. I think everyone has those experiences.
Everyone, right? And go back. Failing with friends is great. Failing in the market is mission critical and sends you broke.
Exactly. Yeah.
And how can attendees continue this conversation with you? Where can they connect with you? Email, social media? Chris?
All of the above.
Yeah. Yeah, all of the above.
What are your handles?
LinkedIn, it's Chris Lowe. Chris.lowe@kirtan.com. Yeah, you can call me, email me, any way you want to get a hold of. I always answer.
Yeah, yeah. And we're the same, like, tom.varga@biotica.com, or just track me down on LinkedIn. Send me a homing pigeon. Mike Tyson's got some, so send one of his pigeons to me. I don't care. Reach out, right? Like happy to communicate. And if anyone's in Australia, they want to go for a tour. If anyone wants to get together and take us through their facility, we absolutely love doing it. And, had the pleasure of seeing a lot of really great people doing great work. So anyway, you reach out, we'll get back to you.
Yeah, and I can't speak for other QA people, but I really enjoy interacting with people on LinkedIn. So I almost always will respond on LinkedIn if people reach out to me. So yeah, and I definitely want to come to Australia, Tom, because that's such a really interesting market. I hope you guys have learned a lot from Canada in terms of hopefully what not to do and what to do as well.
Yeah, you're talking about politicians, Michael. I don't know politicians learn all that much, right?
That's true. I'm no comment.
Yeah, that's all right. I'll say it for you. Don't stress.
Okay, awesome. So as we wrap things up, I want to say heartfelt thank you to our rock star panelists, Chris, Michael, Tom. Fantastic conversation. I'm sure the audience really found it insightful. I know I learned a lot personally. It's always great chatting with you guys. For the audience, the webinar replay along with past sessions will be available on our website, and we'll also send you a copy. If you have any feedback about this session today, or you want to get involved, please email us at partnerships@elevatedsignals.com. And thank you to everyone for joining us. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. See you in the next
Brilliant.
one.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, Dana. Great job.
Yeah, thank you, Tom and Michael and Dana, for having me here. It was really enjoyable, and thanks to everybody in the Kirtan team for helping out and setting things up. So
Yeah, it was a great chat. So really appreciate you guys, and look forward to seeing you out there in the wild.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everyone.
thank you.